Good evening and welcome to the November 20th Scarborough Town Council meeting. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next item on the agenda is the swearing in of the newly elected official. If I could have them all come up here, that would be Mr. Fellows, Mr. Donovan, and Mr. Doherty. I have you over here. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and please state your name,
I, Lisa Doherty,
do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state,
so long as I shall
so long as I shall
continue a citizen thereof.
continue a citizen thereof.
I, and please state your name,
I, Lisa Doherty,
do swear
do swear
that I will faithfully discharge
that I will faithfully discharge
to the best of my abilities
to the best of my abilities
the duties incumbent upon me
the duties incumbent upon me
as a member of the Scarborough Town Council,
as a member of the Scarborough Town Council,
according to the Constitution and the laws of the state
according to the Constitution and the laws of the state
and the Charter of the Town of Scarborough.
and the Charter of the Town of Scarborough.
Congratulations. Just sign me. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
The next item is order number 24-106 is act on the request for nominations and the election of a new town council chair. At this time, I'll take nominations. Councilor Anderson,
I would like to nominate April Scyther as chair.
is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? There being none?
I would like. So, so April has been on the council with me for the past 4 years almost, and her leadership, I think, has been amazing to see come from leading on the board of education to coming here and all the work she's done. I thought you did a great job last year as vice chair for the town council. And I think it's time to have a woman at the helm. So really excited to see you as chair, hopefully.
Any other discussion or comments? Councilor Cushing?
Yes, for another month, I'm still going to reserve my position as new guy. And as new guy and seatmate to April, I was tremendously impressed with how hard she works. You know, they say half the job is showing up, and she showed up all the time, always ready to work. And I recall her saying how much she loved the town of Scarborough, and she has demonstrated that over and over again. So she has my confidence, and I look forward to her leadership.
Anyone else? There being no further comments, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
That's scary. Okay. Over the ice move? Oh, no.
Forget that.
Thank you, everyone. Order number 0-24107 is to act on the request for nominations of newly elected town council vice chair. Do I have any nominations?
Yes,
Yes.
I would like to nominate Councillor Anderson to fulfill that role.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. We all will second. Karen will second. Any discussion? Seeing none?
A little, well, just a little.
Raise your hand.
I had my face up. Again, I really want to say to this group and to John that you will not find a harder working person who understands the minutia of policy better than anyone I've encountered. And weirder than that, he actually seems to enjoy it and makes a tremendous contribution to ensuring that the details don't slip through the cracks. This is a complicated town. We deal with some very complicated issues. And he, of course, has served as chair and now as vice chair. And it's great to have him keeping an eye on stuff for us. So that's what I wanted to say. Next time I'll raise my hand.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Great, congratulations, Vice Chairman. With that, item number 4 is roll call.
Counselor Darty?
Here.
Counselor Cushing?
Here.
Counselor Shu?
Here.
Counselor Anderson?
Here.
Counselor Donovan?
Here.
Counselor Fellows?
Here.
And Chair Seither?
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Item number 5 is general public comment. I will open up the podium to anyone here tonight wishing to make public comment on items that are not on our agenda. As a gentle reminder, you have 3 minutes. Please direct your comments at me, the chair, and I will go ahead and start with Mrs. McKee.
Well, hi. Wow, it's a whole new family. Well, I just wanted to say welcome to our new counselors. It's really wonderful. You're giving your time, and it's going to be fun to watch you all perform. And congratulations to our new chairperson. That's really very wonderful that you're going to take this honor on. And as always, I thank you for all the time and effort that you give so willingly to our town. And I wish to congratulate our town manager, Tom Hull, because of his work with the traffic lights. I love them. When they're right, when you get that green right and you go down Route 1, I hope the police chief isn't here. It's wonderful. And I think AI is really doing a good job. So I do hope that the future planning is in the works for the traffic, because when the Downs has their 1,000 units all completed, the traffic will be really a huge challenge. And we kind of should plan for that. But I have a question. I hope I'm not out of order. Will there be a public comment time on order number 24-109? It's a first reading, but I'm not sure whether you have public.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, that's lovely. And thank you so much and welcome.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Is there anyone online? Okay, seeing no more, I will go ahead and close public comment. Item number 6 is the minutes. This is a bundle of 2 separate meeting minutes, October 16th, 2024 regular town council meeting, as well as the meeting minutes from November 6th, 2024 regular town council meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion? Sure.
How do I vote?
So if you read the minutes and you feel prepared to vote, it's perfectly acceptable for you to vote on them, even though you were not here. Otherwise, you can abstain. I do have one minor edit to the October 16th meeting minutes. It shows Karen Shoup and I not in attendance for the workshop portion. Everyone else's names are listed and Karen and I are missing. So that's just a minor detail. Any other discussion? Okay, those in favor? All right, I realized I had to vote also. Great, I'll show that as unanimous. Thank you. Item number 7 is adjustments to the agenda. Tonight, I would like to propose that we move order number 24-112 to just after the town manager's report. The justification being that we do have our legal counsel here. And so I would like to move that discussion just a little higher in the agenda, if that's okay. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Show that is unanimous. Thank you. Item number 8 is treasurer's warrants. I will sign those after the meeting. And item number 9 is the town manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a number of items. It always surprises me on a late in the week on a Friday, trying to think of what I should put on this. And of course, there's all sorts of things that run into my memory over the weekend. So I do have a couple of ads, but I'll go off in the list that I started over the weekend. For the school building project, pleased to report the committee is up and running. They've completed their consultant selection process, really in record speed. Harriman has been chosen again. It was a very thorough process. Council Chair and myself were able to sit on that selection committee, have the utmost confidence that that process was thorough and the right choices made. And that was brought to the full committee this past week at their meeting and well received. There'll be the first update, you may recall, in the charge that was created for this school building process that we're just starting. There were 4 different dates that were identified as report outs. And the first one happens to be this week. So tomorrow at 6 p.m., there'll be a joint workshop with the Board of Education to receive an initial report. There probably isn't much detailed report, but nonetheless, we think it's important to stay consistent with that schedule. Eastern Trail Project, here I am again. We are still working with DEP and Army Corps on the permit. The issue there is they failed to realize that there was a stormwater component of that in spite of the fact that our application was complete. So they have agreed to expedite that. We do expect for all of it to be well received and it is forthcoming. The bid documents themselves and plans are all ready to go for bid solicitation. I'm also working with our consultant. We're nearing the end of our contract with them and we'll be needing some construction management services in the construction phase. So I'm working with them on a proposal. All of these costs are incidentally covered through the funds that we have remaining. And I'm also working with the Eastern Trail Management District regarding the budget. Some members of council and the public may not recall, but there was a fair amount of corporate fundraising and individual fundraising that had been done some years ago now. And the town, as the fiduciary, has been holding those funds. So we're just making sure that we have good, proper accounting, which we do. And again, getting ready to go to bid. So being firm and clear on available budget is a big part of that. Ms. McKee kind of stole my thunder. The traffic lights for a couple weeks now, they have been fully operational the first time ever, frankly. And essentially that means all the lights from the Saco line through South Portland into South Portland are interconnected. And these all use different types of artificial intelligence to understand the traffic demand that it's seeing and can react accordingly. So I personally have admitted my obsession with traffic and my annoyance at signals not working well. But I've noticed a true improvement. And my plea to all of you is just pay attention when you're driving. Interested in your feedback. I think there's still some fine tuning that needs to occur, but I think we're finally moving in the right direction. With respect to council goals, I expect I'll be working with newly elected leadership to identify dates in the coming weeks for a goal setting session. We also would respectfully request an opportunity for senior staff to meet with council before you do goals. It would be an opportunity, one, to further our relationships with the new counselors, to meet my senior staff, but also for you to get a sense of kind of what we've done and where we see our departments going. And we hope that will help give you some grounding and basis and expectations for your goal setting. So again, I'll work with council leadership to identify some dates, hopefully in the month of December, to do that. With respect to senior staff changes, with Todd Souza, his last day being tomorrow, we have named Nicole Hall as interim director. Nicole has been with the town about 18 years. For anyone who's had the occasion to interact with Nicole, she's very quiet and unassuming, but has the pulse of every single aspect of that operation. So I could not think of a more worthy person to make certain that things are moving forward, not just holding place, but moving forward in the interim. With respect to his replacement, we do have a recruitment process underway. I believe that closes this Sunday. And Liam and I were just taking peeks at some of the applicants. We're pleased with what we see, and we'll certainly move as swiftly as we can to find a replacement. I would say, I think I've demonstrated in past recruitments, particularly for senior staff, that I'm not going to settle, that if I don't find the right candidate, I think we've got good enough systems and support staff in place that we can withstand and wait for the right candidate. So that's my intention. I also want to mention that Autumn finally has some relief. Eric Sanderson left us in August, and Autumn has been a one-person show in planning. We've hired Helen Harmon. I'll call her a development review planner. Is that close enough? But predominantly, she'll be working directly with the planning board and certainly supporting Autumn and the town in all of our planning endeavors. Very pleased to have her aboard. Just want to mention the Thanksgiving community dinner. I don't know how many this is. It's got to be 5 or 6 or 7 at this point. But this, of course, is on Thanksgiving Day, November 28th at the Wentworth Cafeteria from 11 to 1. I'm very pleased to report that they've had tremendous response, so much so they've already reached maximum capacity for volunteers. So this is an event that is really is here to stay, it seems. It's really well received by the community and well supported by the community. The assessor has provided me a couple of updates that I would share with you. With respect to the Senior Property Tax Assistance Program, the council may recall, I think at your last meeting, you provided some additional funds to ensure that all applicants receive maximum reimbursement. And so those, the next morning, I think Nick and his team were already processing that. Checks are on track and be mailed to recipients by the end of this month. The ordinance incidentally requires them to be received by December 15th, so we're confident we'll meet that. And Nick has also authored an article about the program and the 2024 outcomes, and that will appear in the next e-newsletter. Is that right? Or it already did? It did, right. Also, there is a post-revaluation report, kind of a best practices report that Nick put together, as much for our own benefit, but also for his colleagues and for other communities. I think it's important to acknowledge that we really had a stellar process, and in this business, we should be willing to share our best practices with others. So there's a good comprehensive document that's available on his webpage for everyone to see. A few final things. I'm pleased to mention, and this is years in the making, it actually started with former police chief Robbie Moulton and has continued under Chief Holmquist. They have been pursuing an accreditation. This is through the Maine Chiefs Association. They did have a final site visit last week, and we have in fact received our accreditation. As is their practice, they would like to come and award that to this community at a council meeting. So I will work on scheduling for that. But again, this is years of work. They review all aspects from standard operating procedures to facilities to training. It's very, very comprehensive and a great thing for our department to have. I'm very proud of them. With respect to the Black Point Road, back with the January storms, we had some failure of the road toward Checkley Point down in Prouds Neck. We do have the final design back from our design engineers. It's in for internal review as we speak. And so and this is the schedule that we laid out. So I think we're hitting that schedule. We'll be convening a meeting with the Prouds Neck community who's been interested, as you might expect, with all those details. And we've been in very close communication with FEMA as we expect that there'll be reimbursement for these expenses, which will be sizable. Also, in a similar vein, you may be aware we've been working for about a year with MDOT and other partners, looking at the section of Route 1 across the marsh and really trying to understand what is the next evolution of that roadway look like. That's not one that we could even consider discontinuing. This really it's a major arterial, not just for us, but for the region and for the state. That work has been going well. You might have noticed in the last couple of weeks, they were doing test borings to really understand the base structure of that roadway. And that was really one of the final pieces. DOT is going to be convening a meeting that will be a participant on sometime in early December, but their intent is to pursue federal grant funding for a full road reconstruction across the marsh. I can't describe what, the details of the design, but it certainly includes fairly significant elevation change of the roadway, as you might expect. I don't think you need to be an engineer to figure out that that's a key ingredient, but I suspect there are other details that you'll be interested in. One final thing, just looking at the calendar going ahead, the council meets on the first and third Wednesdays. In the new year, the January 1st is probably not a very convenient meeting day for us. And so I would propose, and I can work with leadership, but I just want to kind of test it with all of you, is that we shift for the month of January to the 2nd and 4th. So that'd be January 8th and 22. And again, that's something that we don't need to decide tonight, but I just wanted to flag that. I know your calendars start to fill up. So if you would look and get back to me if you have any conflicts on the 8th or the 22nd, I would recommend that we shift it just for that month. So Madam Chair, that is the completion of my report.
Thank you, Tom. Does anyone have any questions for Tom?
Oh,
Oh,
I
hold
do
on.
have two other
And then I'll come
housekeeping real quick. Just looking ahead, December 4th, your next meeting, we have slated a presentation on the transportation plan. That's something that I think council's aware of. And then on the 18th, tentatively, we have scheduled a joint meeting with the planning board to hear a contract zone proposal from the South Portland Housing. This is for an affordable housing project in the Dunstan area. And final piece, I learned from the finance office that our audit is complete. Remarkable is, it is truly remarkable to have it done before Thanksgiving. That's great. So that's something else we'll look to schedule in the coming months. Thank you.
Councilor Kersing.
Yes, Tom, I don't have a question so much as a comment request. It seems to me that elevating the road across the marsh represents more than sort of a defensive move against the water rising, but it could be a significant opportunity for the town if it were done right and done with some vision. I'm reminded, I forget where it is, up north, there's some absolutely gorgeous bridge. You probably know the one I'm talking about. It's got a tower on it and so forth. I'm not so much suggesting that we do that here, but I'm saying that our marsh is the cornerstone, if you will, of our environment, sustainability, and all of that stuff. And so it would be nice that people think about it as more than let's just raise the road.
No, that's the point. I think they're focused on the nuts and bolts and kind of solving problems right now. And forgive me if there's any engineers in the audience or watching. Engineers are not necessarily concerned with aesthetics always, but I think should be room for that part of the conversation. And I think we're just reaching that point where we can start to raise those. So thank you for that.
Other comments or questions for Tom? Okay. Then we will go ahead and move on to order number 24-112, first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading on a moratorium in the light industrial district. And I'm going to turn this over to Councilor Anderson to give us a little bit of background and to sort of tee this up for us.
Yep. And Autumn, if there's anything you want to add or if I say anything wrong, please feel free to correct me. Okay. Yep, sure. So again, this has come before us, and we're kind of taking the training wheels off the new counselor pretty quickly with something like this, because this isn't something we should be taking lightly. But essentially, the background here is when the town redid its comprehensive plan, we changed our zoning. One of those things was to create a light industrial district that's on the map up there. This is where the former Beach Ridge Speedway was. And so this is unique in that this is the only light industrial zone in town. And as you can see, it's really abutted by rural farming, which is mostly residential. And there's even some residential homes inside the district. There's also an RF overlay, I believe, within the district. So it's a pretty complicated zone, and when you read the zone itself, it feels like it's just an amalgamation of different things. And I think the intent at the time was to have this be an area for economic development, particularly because of the Speedway. And, you know, with all of the things that happened there with oil being all over the place, it really kind of inhibited certain things from happening. And so, again, that's kind of the history of what got us here to that zone. Since then, since the Speedway has been sold, new development is coming in. The current plan is to put in a trucking facility, which again is one of the unique items allowed in the zoning. And again, even with that, there's some history with residents where they feel like that wasn't something that was actually shared through the state statute that requires public notice. And so there's been some feedback from residents that they weren't aware of that particular item in the zoning. So again, there's a lot of uses to do many different things that's listed up there. And again, I think now that we have an actual project going in, it's really starting to uncover all of the challenges within that zoning. So when I met with residents probably 2 months ago at this point to just listen and hear what their concerns were. I know many of them have written us and shared their feedback. I know they reached out to all the candidates to share their concerns as well. Again, the primary things I'm hearing from them are concerns about water. You know, there's no public water or sewer out in that part of town. So the more this develops with businesses, the more risks it puts at the safety of their drinking and water for use in their homes. I inspected one of the wells that one of the neighbors had and saw that it was well below. Again, we're in a drought right now, but again, to see only 3 feet in a 10-foot well was concerning. And so that prompted, you know, my request for long range to take another look at the zone and start a conversation of should we be making changes. That was also at the request of the residents who lived either abutting or in the zone. Long range has reviewed it twice. So initially there were some suggestions to make some adjustments to remove some qualified uses, potentially add in a need to have water and sewer similar to what we have in the Running Hill Road district, which again isn't very developed, partially because there's no public water or sewer going through there. And then, you know, in the last meeting that we had, there was a lot more conversation too. And so really this just needs a lot of time to be studied, reviewed, and done right. And I think in order to give it the time it needs for residents to be engaged, for landowners to be engaged, for SEDCO and businesses to be engaged, we need to kind of put a pause. And so that's essentially what this does. It puts a pause on new applications, anything that's been submitted since November 1st, to allow us to revisit this zoning, to figure out what it really should be. And that's something that the council should weigh in as well. Again, it's situated in a unique spot. And again, it was a very unique zoning choice that was made. And so I think now's the opportunity to have the conversation of 12 years later, what do we really want this to be? What do the residents want it to be that live there, that abut it? What do the landowners want it to be to do what they need to do with their businesses? But continuing to allow new things to come through, I think would be, not the best course of action with what currently is in the zoning, and it needs work. So I hope we consider this tonight. Again, this would be a first read. So tonight is just starting the process. We will have public read and second hearing following this. Changes could happen in the interim. And so this is really just making sure that we're starting the conversation and decide if this is something we want to pursue as a body. I don't know, Autumn, if there's anything else to cover. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, when this was put on the agenda, the staff did notify the abutters. So abutters were aware, and I see many residents, abutters, and landowners here tonight. So I'm sure we'll hear from them as well.
Just to clarify, butters I had contact.
Okay.
Karen Martin with Scarborough Economic Development Corporation. I was around when they did the discussion of this zone. It was before I was chair of SEDCO or executive director. I want to point out, one of the reasons we looked at this zone or this area was because we really were running out of industrial land. So it was supposed to be a future potential and really provide us some breathing room with respect to industrial land. Doesn't mean that we don't need to take a look at it, but I did want to put that context out there, that it wasn't just the Speedway, we were out of land in the industrial park, and we wanted to provide some relief from that.
Thank you, Karen. Does anyone have questions specifically for staff? Keeping in mind, we don't have a motion on the floor yet, so just questions for staff at this point. Okay, so with that, we do have an opportunity for public comment on this item, so I will go ahead and open the floor up to anyone wishing to make public comment.
Denise Hamilton, Two Rod Road. I am one of the abutters for this, and regardless if there isn't any land left for industrial use in the town, it does not belong in a residential community, period. Now, I'll start with what I was going to say. Welcome to the new counselors. You may recall a few weeks before the elections, I, along with several of my neighbors, sent all of you, including the candidates at that time, an email with our concerns for our area, along with what was recommended by long-range planning back in 2012, 2013, which is part of the light industrial rural farming overlay. I'd like to thank Councilors Anderson and Shoup for your replies and support, as well as former Councilor Don Hamel. I resent that email to all of you last night, so I didn't have to repeat everything tonight, since it looked like it could be a long meeting from the agenda. And some of you know I can take all the time allowed and then some. This area that was rezoned was done long before anyone could have imagined what would develop in the Downs and the traffic and safety concerns we would all experience on a daily basis. Now, with the potential of a FedEx trucking terminal in our backyards, threatening our water supply, loud noises, light pollution, added delays with more traffic, and bigger safety issues, I am pleased that this council is seeking a moratorium to allow modifications to be made to the ordinance in this area. My only disappointment is this was not done a year ago when I began asking for it, as we wouldn't be in this situation of potentially having this trucking terminal in our neighborhood that is also going to have a negative effect on our real estate values, as the current developer had just come forward in March, April with their application. So this could have been avoided. I look forward to working with long-range planning, ordinance, and all of you during the process in making the modifications that are right for this area of town, which is west of the Turnpike and won't have such a negative effect on our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Anyone else wishing to make public comment?
Hi, Lori Baxter, 1 Kennebago Drive. Fairly new to the neighborhood, but have been there a while. I built my house in 2016 on 1 Kennebago Drive. And I've written letters, and I do thank John and Karen for your ongoing support for us as the taxpayers in West Scarborough. I just want to really push for the moratorium to take place, to really shape what is coming for us. I second what Denise is saying about the Downs. Our area has grown tremendously in traffic. We wait for traffic lights. I walk every day. I'm concerned about the safety of the streets. Industry does not belong in neighborhoods, and especially passionate about my neighborhood. So I'd like everyone to take a big step back and say, if this was my neighborhood, would I be advocating for these kind of changes to take place in a neighborhood that is existing? And of which I'm passionate about where I am. So I want to stay there. I want to help. I want to work with people to do what's right, but mixing the industry, especially a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week industry business is not the right answer. So my plea is just to take your time, really look at this and work with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Anyone online? Oh, sure.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mike Tadema Wieland. I'm a civil engineer with Teradyne Consultants, and I'm here representing Daniel Dickinson. Mr. Dickinson owns nearly 50% of the land area within the light industrial district, 52 acres of which are an internal, two internal parcels located behind the proposed FedEx site. It's bound by the turnpike, bound by Two Rod Road, and of course, the FedEx, proposed FedEx parcel. Mr. Dickinson purchased this land in July of 2022 with an intent to develop it in accordance with the standards of the light industrial district. After purchasing it, he invested quite a bit of time and money in land surveys, wetland delineations, vernal pool studies, environmental site assessments, and he's been working more recently with FedEx in order to negotiate access for his parcel over the FedEx parcel. So it would be access from Holmes Road to access his parcels for development. He's also engaged my firm, Teradyne Consultants, to lead the design and permitting of a project in accordance with, again, the standards of the light industrial district. And 2.5 years after his purchase and initial investment of this property, we're just a mere weeks away from submitting these preliminary applications to the planning board. And we're being stopped by this potential moratorium and potential zone changes to zoning. So all that is just to say, land developers, they need certainty in order to invest in a community. They need long-term planning and zoning, and actions like moratoriums and sudden zone changes will discourage that sort of development into the future. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. Dan Dickinson of 40 Holmes Road, Scarborough. Congratulations to the new council in April. Congratulations. I've prepared a statement. I will request a lenience. I'm going to need about 5 minutes. I'm sorry, but I tried to make it quicker.
I'm gonna give you 3.
I'll do my best. Let's start with just to say, in response to what John just said, the vision of the light industrial zone didn't start in 2013. It started in 2005 and potentially even earlier with the 2006 comprehensive plan. It's been nearly 20 years that this has been a thing, and it's got precedence. It has standing. So I oppose this moratorium over the light industrial district, or the LI district. A moratorium is an extreme measure that should only be used in emergencies or under extraordinary circumstances. Otherwise, it creates uncertainty for businesses and residents with precisely what the zoning process seeks to prevent. A moratorium reflects either a failure of zoning process or a knee-jerk reaction to an allowed zoning use that some may find objectionable. In this case, it's clearly the latter. The LI district was not created arbitrarily. It was a result of thoughtful planning to address the legacy of the challenging uses in the district off of the Holmes Road, such as the town landfill, the adjacent tire landfill, our junkyard and automobile recycling facility, as well as the former motor speedway. These uses have made the area unsuitable for residential development, but ideal for light industrial activity. The district was established in 2013 after extensive work by the Long Range Planning Committee, aligning with the goals of the community-driven driving the 2006 Comprehensive Plan and reaffirmed in the 21 Comprehensive Plan. The LI district represents a low to moderate density, low residential growth area designed to support Scarborough planned economic growth. This is a growth area of the town. Its zoning stems from long-term efforts, community involvement, and vision to encourage public water, sewer, and utility extensions to serve the district. Based on the vision, based off this vision, I acquired over 78 acres in this district since 2019. Now the Long Range Planning Committee and the Planning Director and some council members propose rezoning the LI district, not through collaborative or careful approach used previously, but via a moratorium and likely expediting zoning changes. This is bad zoning policy and inconsistent with Scarborough's values. Such actions set a dangerous precedent. Will every zone be changed with minimal input and forethought? This proposed moratorium is particularly frustrating viewed alongside the recent announcement that a new Market Basket grocery store is coming to the Downs, which will increase traffic yet again significantly at the Holmes Road and Payne Road intersection. Additionally,
Mr. Dickerson, I'll give you 30 more seconds.
I'm engaged in active negotiations, as Mike said, with FedEx. I'll skip over that. This moratorium jeopardizes these plans, undermining the economic vitality of the LI district, disrupting years of careful planning. These aligned demonstrate demand that would encourage larger uses to develop business in Scarborough while funding the extension of essential utilities under the main turnpike. For those unfamiliar, I control 70% of the remaining developable land in the LI district, which is nearly 50% of the district's total land area. Eliminating the district would severely negatively impact me, my family, my business, and my investments. While some will argue that this is just a moratorium and no decisions have been made, Town Councilor Karen Shoup has publicly expressed intentions to eliminate the LI district as well as prevent sewer and water extensions needed and make FedEx a non-conforming use. This puts my junkyard at risk as well. Are you going to put my junkyard at non-conforming use as well?
Mr. Dickinson.
Yeah, I think I'm good. May I just say that the 2006 Comprehensive Plan and the 2021 Comprehensive Plan supports growth in the light industrial district. It supports extending the water and sewer. It's a growth area. It's not a rural farm area. There's a town landfill there.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment this evening? Okay, with that, I will go ahead and close public comment. And just as a quick reminder, we will be having a public hearing on this issue at our next meeting. And so that will give the public an opportunity to take the podium again if you wish. With that, I will ask for a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Counselor Shoup.
Sure. So for those who don't know, I serve as the planning board liaison, and before I was a counselor, I was on the planning board. So for the last 3 years, I've been involved somewhat with this process and I've watched it. If I'm not at a planning board meeting, please know that I do watch them after. I'm watching them, I ask questions, and I have been speaking to the residents. It's been painful to watch the process with the FedEx. And I think what we discovered is while we have this light industrial zone, it was kind of spurred off of maybe what was happening there at the time. And then we said, maybe we should make this industrial, but it's just not appropriate. And I think it wasn't until we started going through the process with a corporation that we sort of started to really realize how inappropriate it was. The roads really, I do not think can handle any sort of business out there. I'd say there's some issues with no utilities whatsoever. It's unclear to me what light industrial zones throughout any area that is operating without public utilities. So I think there's something odd about the fact that we don't have public utilities out there. And so I'm not making any decisions tonight. I really just want my fellow counselors to take the time and support the moratorium so we can further discuss and explore kind of what's going on out there. You know, we don't really want to have public utilities out there because that would typically encourage development. And so I think that's something that we need to think about and encourage them with moratorium. We have neighbors that are abutting a light industrial zone who only recently learned, and I was also educated, that they do not apply under the Good Neighbor Ordinance. And I think that was a huge revelation that we as counselors need to think about, where there's protections in place for residents, but in this situation, there's actually no protection for the residents when it comes to the day-to-day business, the noises and the things and the lighting. And the lighting is a big issue. And so any business, anyone developing in the light industrial would be able to do light, noise, things like that, and the neighbors would not have repercussions. So I think when we talk about, is this appropriate, that's something also that we need to consider, is this appropriate? I hear Mr. Dickinson, I think, and again, I've been through the whole process. He is working with FedEx. What's concerning is with the light industrial, with the way that it's zoned now, his only point of access is plowing through wetlands through the FedEx property. And I don't really think that's really what we're looking for either, is to create access, which is further impacting wetlands and things like that. What I'm doing here is just kind of listing through some of the major issues. I think we've watched in the news that rural farms are disappearing, but yet we're saying, oh no, we want to keep a light industrial zone next to a rural farm in an area with no utilities. Again, there's a lot of issues going out there. I think a moratorium is very appropriate. I hope that we can have this passed tonight and take the time and be really thoughtful about what we need in Scarborough and what our vision is for the future of that area.
Thank you. Counselor Anderson.
Yeah, I think Karen raised some interesting points about the current zoning. Like one of the things in there that I discovered as I was digging into it as part of the liaison to long range was we do allow for high-tech facilities, and there are performance standards in our zoning for allowing for those types of facilities that limit essentially the same things that we're allowing FedEx to do. So again, that's where there's some incongruence, in my opinion, with what's allowed in the zoning today with the situation we're in, and we just got to clean it up, and we got to make sure that what's in there is really what we as a town want it to be. This isn't a permanent thing, and I can't predict the future that it's going to change. Maybe we keep what's in there, and unfortunately for Mr. Dickinson, that means waiting until we're done to figure out what the answer is. I would also say to him, if we do change the zoning, we also have the contract zone process, so they could come in and request that essentially a waiver and do a contract zone if you want to continue with your plan. So this doesn't prohibit you from alternative pathways if you wanted to take that path. My preference would be for the neighbors and the landowners to work together to help create what the vision of this area could look like. So hopefully there's a win-win for everyone. And I want to believe there is a win-win, but we have to do it together. And I think the moratorium gives us the opportunity to do it. I think this is specifically why we have moratoriums, is to, when we need to change zoning, like we're proposing or that we've endeavored to start, that I'm hearing from long range that we do need to make some significant changes potentially. This is why we have this at our disposal. It is responsible management, it's responsible zoning. It is, one of the few things in charter that we are responsible to do as counselors is to manage the zoning of the town, and this is what we're trying to do. It's the first time since I've been on council for the 4 years that I've been on that we've really looked at an entire zone. We've always made adjustments, tweaks, and those happen from time to time, but this is a first for me where it's, taking a step back and saying, let's revisit this, let's really challenge ourselves. It's been nearly 20 years since the 2006 comprehensive plan. Things have changed in town. It's time to take a moment, revisit, work with the community and the public and figure out what's right for this area. So I think in order to do it, we need the moratorium. And I would say, while it's 180 days, the one thing I learned, or the experience I feel like I had when we did the moratorium for marijuana, was that time span maybe slowed us down a little bit in taking swift action. So I'm not necessarily thinking we should wait 180 days. I would like to move this as quickly as we can through the process and make sure it's a highly engaged process with the public. If that happens to take 180 days, that's fine. But if we can get it done faster, that would be my preference to make sure. And so hopefully as we work through goals, we prioritize this as something for this council to make sure we quickly get this addressed so that the landowners and the neighbors know what to expect.
Thanks, Sean. Other counselor comments? Counselor Cushing.
Yes. Candidly, I don't like this moratorium business at all. That we have long-term planning, long-range planning, comprehensive plans to look into some kind of crystal ball. And as you've heard testimony, that people look at those actions and they invest hard-earned dollars in the future of our community and doing things which they read in the books that say, look, we relied on you, on your laws. And, you know, it's one thing when something is up and running. For example, in the instance of the cannabis, there was clearly an unintended consequence, which was the odor. And it made sense to step back and take a look at that. Here we are anticipating consequences. This sounds a lot like not in my backyard, okay? And the other point I want to make is that in 6 months or so, you'll all be back here wondering what's happening to the tax rate. The reason that Scarborough has the lowest tax rate in our community is because we have business development that offsets the residential tax rate. And candidly, you know, once you establish this precedent, who wants to come here and take a gamble on a long-term investment that says that, gee, maybe somewhere down the road, we're going to change the rules? I don't understand how that works. That's bad government. It's, oops, we make a mistake. We're going to compensate Mr. Dickinson for the extra time because we didn't have the foresight to look at this. And then I come back and I say, gee, what was out there? You know, a salvage yard, a speedway, a dump, and somehow raising that standard to have some modern light industry out there suddenly becomes a bad thing. Now, if somebody can show me that there was some problem in the process, that we didn't do this the right way, that we made some serious errors, then I might reconsider. But frankly, you know, you've heard me, all of people heard me speak on behalf of the business community before, because frankly, Scarborough is such a vital place because we have a vibrant, successful business community. But if we get a reputation of changing the rules, that'll go away quick. Talk to people from Cape Elizabeth who have a lovely bedroom community, and they can't afford to build a school without raising their taxes way up because they don't have any business. It's a bad message. So I'm afraid that you won't get my vote on this issue.
Thanks, John. Other counselor comments? Yeah, Counselor Fellows.
Thank you. Just as a point of fact and point of clarification, and this is partly a function of me being new to the council, but also just for the record for anyone who may be watching, this moratorium would not affect FedEx. Is that right? Based on where they are in the process? Okay. Yeah, I wanted to, that was my understanding, and I did want to sort of highlight that because it feels to me like this broader issue is being conflated with this project that is already in process. And I do have, so I want it to be clear to everyone that regardless of what may or may not happen with this moratorium, that at least as things stand, as I understand them, it'll have no bearing on FedEx. And I feel like a lot of this conversation and some of what we're hearing is, and some of what I've seen and read is sort of framing it as a referendum on FedEx and that particular project, which I don't think is really appropriate. And I share some of the reservations and concerns that Councillor Cushing voiced and that Mr. Dickinson voiced around potentially setting a harmful precedent and doing sort of what could in effect end up being kind of retroactive zoning based on projects that are already moving forward. I formerly served on the planning board as well, and I also served on long-range planning. I was on the long-range planning committee when the comp plan was updated in 2021. There was a robust effort to encourage community engagement in that. It was a very transparent process. I know it's a recurring challenge that we see throughout the town to sort of, you know, to get the level of community participation that we would ideally like to see. And unfortunately, and I get it, it's human nature and I'm, you know, I'm a resident of the town and I think it's human nature to really only kind of sit up and activate when something is in your backyard. I do have a lot of sympathy for the concerns of the neighbors. But I do have serious reservations about sort of doing a redo, doing a do-over, when there are people who are making investments and taking real risk to move forward on the basis of long-range planning. So, you know, this is still new to me, and I still am digesting some of the details and some of the context. So, you know, I'm not saying I wouldn't necessarily approve this on first reading, but I would, to me, the burden of proof would be on the proponents, given those concerns. So, thank you.
Counselor Anderson, and then I'll come to you.
You know, I just want to emphasize that what this is essentially doing is allowing a pause while we allow staff, the public, to reassess. The outcome of that might be it stays the way it is. And so I'm not advocating one way or the other of whether things need to change or not. What I'm advocating is that we need to allow, given the feedback we've heard from the public, the impact of what's happening in that district. You know, I totally appreciate all the hard work that goes into comp planning, but the same thing goes where you can't predict the future. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. And when you make mistakes, it's important to own it and respond accordingly. And so as far as I'm concerned, there were some mistakes made that need to get revisited. Again, as it goes through the process, people need to hopefully come to consensus that what it's going to be should be firm and should stay that way for the years to come. So again, I just think that process is already underway in long range. They're debating it. It's started. I don't think it's going to stop the process whether we do the moratorium or we don't have the moratorium. It's just going to mean more things could come in over the next 6 months before we've had the opportunity to really determine what is the best thing for this district, which again, could be what it is. But we need to, in my opinion, respect what we've heard from the residents, work quickly to respect the landowners' needs, and really make sure that we just take a moment to pause, reflect, and hopefully figure out what this zoning should actually be.
Counselor Shoup?
Sure. So we represent the residents of Scarborough. We've heard from over 20 residents who live in this area that are concerned, we have one resident who is saying don't do it, and then we have a business who we feel like we've just said doesn't seem appropriate. I just wanted to kind of counter or respond to what Councilor Cushing was saying about comp planning and things like that. Part of the reason I'm supporting the moratorium is we specifically have identified back in 2012, the Long Range Planning Committee specifically recommended to not allow trucking terminals, but yet somehow, and they had other recommendations that were not included. And I think part of the moratorium process is to discover why that didn't happen, what happened during that process in 2012, where the recommendation was to not allow what is specifically happening today. And I think the residents of Scarborough do deserve to at least have that to be done.
So
Thanks,
my-
Karen. Hold on.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Go ahead, Counselor Cushing.
So my question is, well, what does Mr. Dickinson do for the next 180 days while we're thinking about it? Does the bank hold off on his mortgage? What about the long-term investment that he's made? And I'm asking this question to say, you know, that, well, I just learned, whoops, we made a mistake. We weren't supposed to put trucking, and yet now we have a FedEx terminal. That would be on us, wouldn't it? And so we just say, oh, we're government, we're not accountable for our mistakes, we'll just do an oopsie and have a moratorium and straighten this thing out. I mean, you know, and I think I've seen this, you know, we had this conversation with my perennial issue, the plovers, where, you know, I thought that law was not necessarily a great law. It passed. It will be on the books until it's either repealed or what? We have a moratorium. So the things that happened a long time ago, the things that happened here tonight, do have long-term implications and people rely on them. So the question is, how do we reconcile those two? I'm not trying to diss the neighbors, okay? But I also feel like this government does not only represent the residents, but it represents the community, which includes the economic development which benefits the residents. And so I don't get somebody needs to explain to me how we don't seem capricious here and how we don't recognize that people have made investments and relied on the judgments that this government made, even though it was a long time ago and things change. So we make these laws, we stick them in the drawer. Somebody reads them and says, oh, look what I can do here in Scarborough. They go to the bank says that's good. They get their money, okay? And then they start buying up property, thinking that, gee, there was a dump here, there was a racetrack here and so forth. This makes sense to me. Now I'm going to buy this property. That's their point of view. So, first of all, I'm remembering that we passed a 180-day moratorium with the cannabis, and then we came back for a second bite for another 180 days, and we were working on a third, right? That's not good government. So a 180-day moratorium, maybe we should say, okay, let's, this is on us. Let's put our feet to the fire. Okay, 60 days maybe? You want to amend it? I see a nod back there going once. You want to make it 60 days, make it 60 days and get to work.
Counselor Donovan.
When I read the materials that
Give your
were
mic.
presented. Thank you. When I read the materials that were presented, it really struck me personally, from my own years as a lawyer, as deja vu. I had this case in Exeter 35 years ago. And we went to the Supreme Court in New Hampshire. Supreme Court agreed. You're making rules after the fact. You're endangering, creating liability risks for the town. Whether this set of circumstances would match up with that, I don't know. I just arrived, sitting in this seat for the first time in 5 years. But we do have our town attorney here, who I think it would be good if the chair would allow the town attorney to speak to the issue of the liability risks that we're taking by proceeding on the course that's being proposed.
I absolutely think that's appropriate. Phil, would you mind taking the podium? Thank you.
Good evening. Phil Saucier from Bernstein Sure and the town attorney. Councilor Donovan, I think you're asking about, maybe it would be helpful for me to give a 1 or 2 minute overview of the law of moratoria. So Maine law allows municipalities to adopt moratoria. This council, as you've just heard, has exercised that right recently as relates to other types of uses. That law is found in Title 30A, which is the municipal title, 4356. So it is considered a planning tool that the legislature has given municipalities the authority to do. You do need to meet 2 standards. So there's got to be a necessity for that moratorium, and there's got to be a definitive term. So the necessity part, which there are some whereas clauses that get to it in some of the discussion that you're having tonight, is sort of elucidating that necessity, but I'll just read it. It's fairly short. So a moratorium must be needed to either A, prevent a shortage or an overburden of public facilities that would otherwise occur during the effective period of the moratorium, or that is reasonably foreseeable as a result of any proposed anticipated development. So that would be public facilities. That could include your roads, for example. Or because the application of existing comprehensive plans, land use ordinances, or regulations, or other applicable laws, if any, is inadequate to prevent serious public harm from residential, commercial, or industrial development in the affected geographic area. So that's the other necessity. That's typically the the standard that's invoked, that you have some sort of development pressures, and your current in the opinion of the council, your current ordinances are not sufficient. That's what you would be finding in essence if you adopt a moratorium. So that's allowed. The term cannot be any longer than 180 days as an initial term, and that can be extended for additional 180 day terms. If the problem giving rise to the need for the moratorium still exists, and you're making reasonable progress to alleviate the problem. So in other words, you're reviewing your ordinances, you're coming up with potential solutions. So you can't just sit there and not do anything. And I know you typically do have obviously a very good planning process. So the short answer in terms of moratorium, they're allowed. I think Councilor Donovan's getting to this idea of retroactive application of moratorium. Can you apply a moratorium retroactively? As proposed, you are doing that, but not that far back, right? So there's a retroactivity clause in here, and under Maine law, the default is that any law, whether it's from a town council or the legislature, is prospective in nature. That's found in Title 1-302. However, you can have a notwithstanding that law provision. That's the retroactivity provision. And you'll see in here, notwithstanding 1 MRS section 302, this moratorium will apply to any application that was received as of November 1, 2024. That was in this proposal. So it wouldn't obviously reach all the way back to the spring. The answer to your question though is you could under Maine law. So you were talking about a case 35 years ago in New Hampshire. It was about 35 years ago in Maine that the Maine Supreme Court held that municipalities can retroactively apply moratorium to pending proceedings, meaning a proceeding that had already had at least one substantive review beyond just a completeness review. That was a case called Portland versus Fisherman's Wharf in 1988. So that's been the law in Maine since then. And so you can reach back. That's a question that is a policy question. It's a fairness question that depends on the it depends. And so some towns will do that. Some towns choose not to do that. Right. So that's a decision for the legislative body, in your case, the council. So this doesn't reach back that far. Right. So it's as drafted, it's to any application that would have been received as of November 1. Does that answer your question, Councilor Donovan?
Yes.
Okay.
Else have questions for legal counsel? Great, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right, any other final discussion as we prepare to vote? Yes, Counselor Anderson, one more go.
Yeah, one more go, and then I'm done. So I just want to say, from my perspective, there has been nothing capricious here. I think, unfortunately, what's happened is this has been brought to us for over a year by the residents, and we've been busy with other things. I finally started listening, and I met with them, and I started to understand, and I regret not paying more attention earlier and bringing it forward earlier. And I mean, that's my mistake. And so I am trying to make up for my mistake of not doing something sooner that probably should have been done. But again, we're busy. We have a lot of priorities, a lot's going on. So I apologize to the neighbors, but we're here now, and now is at least the time to figure out, does that zone need to change? And again, if this doesn't pass, you know, Long Range is still debating, working on this. So there will be work and potential zoning changes that may come forward. So really, again, in my mind, you know, I would be fine shortening the length. 60 days, I don't know is feasible, just because we're a new council, we're just getting sat. So that just feels infeasible for us to be able to do. So maybe that's something we can all think about if this goes forward from first reading, is what is the right amount of days, and let's hold ourselves accountable to not be in a situation and repeat what we learned through the marijuana one, which was, let's not keep kicking the can and delay the work. Let's like work through it, make definitive action, and make choices and move forward. Because I think, again, the residents and the landowners both are owed that. They're owed us to work swiftly to assess this and decide what's next. So I would like to hear from staff maybe in the next couple of weeks of what's feasible in terms of how quickly we can actually work through this.
Thanks, John. So I will go ahead and weigh in and just say that I feel a little bit of apologies to the new counselors because I feel like we just opened a fire hydrant and said, here you go, take a sip. For me, I feel like there's a really steep learning curve here, even just being exposed this evening on this topic. This is not a topic that the full council has had a discussion on. And, you know, timing wise, we deliberately waited until the new council was sat so that we could have this really robust discussion. And so at this point, I would be in favor of this at first reading. I think we've heard some of the amendments or potential changes that we could make as we develop this conversation further. And then just to remind the public, we do have a built-in public hearing on this topic if this passes tonight for our next scheduled meeting. And so, you know, we'll be able to gather even more public feedback at that time. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and call the vote. Oh, certainly, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you. I sympathize with both too, hearing this, you know, because I like to make it fair for everybody. I always like to listen and I can sympathize with people investing money into land and doing it on this. He mentioned about 60 days. Half of 180 is 90 days. And would that be reasonable? And would they, you know, are we going to vote on that now? Do we, if we amend this, I mean, we're going to vote.
You could offer an amendment to reduce the moratorium to 90 days if you wanted to offer that amendment.
then
This
we'll
is
vote.
first reading, and so we could vote on that amendment. There's also time to make that amendment at second reading.
Right. So I make a motion to go for moratorium for 90 days. I think it's fair.
I second.
Okay, there's a second discussion on the amendment.
That's all right.
Counselor Cushing.
You know, I think that is a reasonable compromise. And I think that that we really do need to get into the detail and understand. I want to know a lot more about the history of this thing and what the business people, landowners, land purchasers relied on. And so that, and maybe in that time frame, we're not putting such a terrible burden on the property owners and allowing time to figure out a solution that does not punish the land investors. That would be extremely important to me. And so I would support 90 days on the first reading, and I would expect to understand a lot more about specifically what's going to happen in those 90 days and what the implications of those deliberations are. And so those people who are advocating for this should be prepared to show up 2 weeks from now in the public hearing with a lot more information about the history, about the investments that have been made out there, about how the public was informed or not informed, etc. And so, and I would say from the standpoint of the law is just because it's legal doesn't necessarily mean it's fair. And I think we need to weigh that. And in our justice system, I think what happens is that the justices are always trying to balance the law versus fairness in their deliberations. And that would suggest to me that we are not without risk here. So that's why this is very important that we get it right. So I'll support the amendment for 90 days.
Great, thank you. I have a process question. Is the 90 days effective November 1st, 2024, or does it start the day we vote at second read? Thank you, Phil.
So it would, the law will be, the ordinance will become effective immediately if it's adopted at second reading. And so that's 90 days from the vote. But it will have a look back.
I
period,
understand.
And it will apply retroactively.
Okay.
To November 1st.
Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Okay. I just want to make sure we all understand the time frame that we're voting on, because if what we're really talking about is November 1st and then we're reducing it down to 90 days, then we're maybe shaving off more time than we intended. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, just to make a finer point, we're on a schedule, presumably that effective date could be December 18th.
Thank you. Counselor Anderson.
I support the amendment. I think it's a good compromise. I think it holds us accountable and makes us make sure that we're considering all sides. So I would support 90 days.
Other comments on the amendment? Okay, I will go ahead and call the vote on the amendment. All those in favor? I show that as unanimous. Thank you. Back to the main motion as amended. Is there any further discussion?
A little bit. Just to clarify, light industrial and a FedEx building, and we're talking about, if we do the moratorium, it's on anything more than the FedEx. So the FedEx thing is going to happen, is what you're saying. And we have to make a decision on what's going to be with the rest of the land. In other words, with his business, he said, I don't know what's out there, but scrap yard or something. It's not going to affect that either, right? I mean, you ain't going to tell him you can't do that anymore. All right. Okay, thank you.
So, and just be clear, FedEx has not secured their final planning board approvals. I think they're poised and scheduled for January approval at this point.
One more issue, as far as sewer and water, he was talking about them getting, for that kind of facility, wouldn't they have to get that out there to be able to build a facility like that? No? I mean, as far as Maine, DEP and environmental, they can.
That's been the subject of extensive discussion with the planning board, and presumably they've demonstrated the ability to service their needs without public utilities at this point.
Yeah, so a FedEx terminal is considered light industrial?
Under our definition, yes.
Yeah. I guess that's gonna be the issue here, is what is light industrial and what was intended? And it was Beecher Speedway, I assumed, is why it was, enacted. So, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Donovan.
Attorney Saucier identified a threshold question of the necessity of doing this. I think we should look carefully at the necessity aspect of this, because that may not be met here. If Attorney Saucier could provide us with a little bit more detail on that point in writing, I think it would help us all understand whether or not we have a circumstance that justifies this action.
Okay, your request is understood, appreciated. Go ahead, Counselor Fellows.
Just to piggyback on that, I agree with what Counselor Donovan said, and I appreciate the amendment from Counselor Doherty, and I'll support that at first reading, the 90 days. And I agree that based on what Attorney Saucier said, that threshold question is critical, and I think that should be a focus of what we do during that 90 days if this does go into effect. And I say, for example, to me, just again, sitting here at my first council meeting, while I understand that there's increased traffic based on development in the Downs and elsewhere, I'm not sure that something like that would necessarily qualify as an emergency or something that would in and of itself create the necessity for a moratorium, which is something that to me should only be considered under truly extraordinary circumstances. Thank you.
Just to be clear, I just want to be, for the council's benefit, I think the necessity decision you ought to consider and evaluate before you approve the moratorium. That's where it really is relevant, not necessarily after approval. It's really the threshold question to approving the moratorium.
Any last comments? Okay, I will go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor of the main motion as amended? Great, I see that as unanimous. Thank you, guys. Now we are moving on to order number 24 095, 7 PM public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 405 zoning ordinance, Section 13 residential zoning districts, and Section 9 performance standards related to farm stands in rural farming districts. And I will pass this over to Autumn. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Give me just a moment. If I can. All right, thank you. Congratulations to you all. I've met you all and I'm pleased to be working with you. I'm here quite often. This is I'll give you a little bit more background than usual. This is a public hearing and a second reading. This request came before our ordinance committee in April of this year, and it has to do with farm stands, appropriate uses in farm stands and farm stores. And so our ordinance permits farm stands and agricultural product stores in the rural farming district if they are associated with a commercial farm, a commercial fishery, harvesting use. When they first came to us, the problem is we have a specific performance standard in place that really it restricts what can be sold in those farm stands. And so we took this is just an overview of the process that we've had. The Long Range Planning Committee looked at this in June, and the Ordinance Committee looked at it in September, and then we had our first reading in October. So just to get you up to speed on that. And the Planning Board looked at this Monday. So there's a lot of words on this, but basically farm stands, you can sell products that are grown, raised, or harvested on the farm. You can sell products that are processed from products that are grown, raised, or harvested from the farm. You can also sell agricultural products, processed products that are not produced by the farm. So for instance, you can sell soap and honey and things of that nature. You cannot sell purses unless they're maybe made from wool, harvested from sheep, right? So there are quite a few things that you could sell. And you can also do handmade art and craft products. So this is very specific in what's permitted. But the hard part and the question that this came up with is that there is a requirement to report the sales every year to the zoning administrator and my office, the revenue that you made from that farm stand and the products that you sold. And so there's a threshold that you have to make 51% of your revenue from products that are from the actual farm. And so this is where the question came up. Okay, I have a farm stand, and keep in mind too, farm stands can only be 400 square feet. So these are very small. They're associated with the rural farming use and commercial agricultural use. And then the farm stores can be 1,000 square feet. So the question arose that, all right, I'm selling a product that meets all of the criteria, but I can't prove up that 51% of the revenue from the products came from the actual farm. And so at first blush, we brought forward a recommendation to add a special exception request to this. And so that is what's in the draft proposal. And I believe it was you, Councilor Cushing, and I tend to agree. You said, why not just strike this? This is a bit cumbersome. Why do we have this 51%? And so we discussed this with the planning board on Monday night, and they came to the same conclusion that they prefer to strike the entire clause, that the specific uses that are permitted is significant enough that it would work for the farm stand uses. And so that's what's before you for second reading. Planning board would recommend an amendment to the proposed ordinance to strike clause 6 and 7 and not worry about adding a special exception process.
Thank you, Autumn. Does anyone have any questions? Counselor Doherty.
This is refreshing. I thought I'd have an uphill battle coming onto this board. And finally, we're actually having bureaucratic, cumbersome things cut back. And that's what I want. So that's what I get out of this is you're gonna eliminate the clause. Makes it easier for the farm stand people. They don't have to worry about government being in their face.
Certainly.
Excellent. I'm 100% for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Any other questions for Autumn while we have her? Okay, thank you. With that, I will take a motion.
So moved.
Oh,
Excuse me.
Everybody caught me so quick. There is opportunity for public comment on this. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment this evening? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Do I have a motion?
Second. I mean, so now you messed me up. So moved. Yeah, there we go.
We will find our rhythm, guys, I promise. Discussion.
Yes, question. Autumn suggested that we amend.
Mr. Cushing,
Yeah.
saying yes question into the microphone does not grant you permission to speak.
Oh,
Please wait to be recognized.
it's fine.
That's okay. Counselor, I did, but other people put their hands up at the same time. So Counselor Cushing, I'm gonna let you go first, but please raise your hand.
I think Autumn recommended that we amend this thing, so I'd like to just motion that we amend it to do what Autumn said. And
Second.
Okay,
And that's an amendment to strike clause 6 and 7 from the document
That's 6 and 7 in the performance standards?
in the performance standards.
And to not make the changes to chapter 405 residential districts. So we will not add the special exception and we will strike the clause 6 and 7.
Okay, does everyone understand the amendment? Okay, we have a second. Is there discussion on the amendment? Okay, seeing none, I will go ahead and call a vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Okay, I show that as unanimous. Back to the main motion as amended. Discussion. Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? See that as unanimous. Thank you. Order number 24-1087 7 PM public hearing and action on the following new request for a food handler's license and liquor license from 8 Below LLC doing business as Moe's Original Barbecue located at 450 Payne Road, Unit D.
Yes, thank you. This is a new application, as it's noted. Like all new applicants, they have to come before the council for approval. This particular request is coming to you, the applicant, they have not received their occupancy permit. However, in order for them to get their liquor license, it takes a few weeks at the state level. So I put this on here requesting that the council approve the request and also that they would not receive any of their licenses until they receive their occupancy permit. But it puts their liquor license application in motion with the state. So when they go to open, they'll have it available to them.
Thank you, Tony. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks. Is there discussion on this? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you. Old business, there is no old business at this time. New business, order number 24-109, first reading and refer to the planning board, the proposed amendments to chapter 405 zoning ordinance, section 6, definitions, section 9, performance standards, section 18, right? A town and village center districts, TVC, sections 18B, Higas Parkway District and Village Fringe District, TVC C3, section 18E, Town and Village Centers 4 District, TVC 4, section 19, Regional Business District B2, section 19A, General Business District B3, section 20, Business Office Research District BOR, section 20C, Crossroads Planned Development CPD, section 21, Industrial District. Holy mackerel. Thank you, Autumn.
I warned you.
I should have practiced that.
So this one is a little bit longer. It's a mobile food vendor proposal. And so you're probably asking yourself, why now? My department, I have the code enforcement officers, the zoning administrators, and the planning department and permits. And we work very closely with public safety, the deputy fire chief, and we get requests on a pretty regular basis for food trucks in town. we do not currently have any sort of ordinances that speak to food truck uses. We do have some policies in place that we use if there's an event or a catering, we can let those occur. We have been receiving ongoing pressure to permit those food trucks at events and activities, and we also have received a specific request to permit a mobile food court. And so what we've done is we took this to Long Range Planning Committee back in August of this year and then September. And so they considered, staff drafted a proposal and they responded to that, and we worked on that for an additional meeting. We took away some of the initial proposal. We also used the amazing Karen from Sedco to help us with the survey, and we put that out to all of the restaurants and food vendors in town that we were aware of. And we also, there's a lovely online Zoom presentation that we put on. So if you would like to watch any of that, all of that is available on our website. We did not get a lot of feedback. We did receive some questions and some concerns with the desire that food trucks don't get to just have an easy time. They have to meet the same site plan requirements. And so that was important to consider. We also had some concerns with, is the town going to do a food court on its property? And that's not up for consideration at all. This is just some enabling language. And it's actually 3 items in your packet. So this first has to do with all of the 405 language to create the use. And there's actually, the second item is creating a license, and then we have to create a fee. So as I said, we'll define the uses, we have to determine where they are permitted, and then we'll do the license requirements. So I'll just go through this briefly. We've created 2 definitions for mobile food vendors and then a mobile food vendor court. And the reason that this is important is in their review, the Long Range Planning Committee was uncomfortable just addressing one mobile food truck on a site. They wanted to make sure that it was really a designated space that had to go through our site plan process. So if you can, a mobile food vendor court is 2 or more to qualify. So when we looked at where these would be appropriate, the easiest way was where are restaurants permitted now. We did have discussion about, do we need to concern ourselves with 100 feet distances from restaurants and food trucks? And it was determined at Long Range that that is not, since they would be functioning, they would have to go through the same site plan process. That was not something that they recommended adding to that. So this would just function as an allowed use in the district. So town and village centers, Higas Parkway, the Downs, our regional business and general business zones, our business office research, and our industrial zones is what's on the discussion. Those are all the numbers and letters that Chair Seither went through. So there are still some exempt locations that are outlined in the ordinance, and so we would still exempt a one-time event, and we would still exempt a private catered event and town-sponsored event. However, we would require that those vendors be licensed. So that would be a separate process. We feel that most of these vendors are probably going to be the same. A lot of the vendors that we see have licenses in Portland. And in working with public safety, they would actually be, there's an inspection component to the licensing. And so they feel that we're going to see a lot of crossover. And we are also confident that a lot of the inspections that have done in Portland, we will be able to simply say, yep, you're good, and move on. What is not permitted, and I've said it a few times, but this is just to reiterate, what is not permitted is a standalone drive around food truck. So that is not contemplated with this ordinance. So chapter 405B, these are all the requirements that we require for every use in town. You have to go through site utilization and layout. These are all the things that we've been working on the last 2 years to consolidate. And so all of these would apply except for architectural design standards. What would happen is a proponent for a food truck court would come in with their layout and everything, and they would basically get the pads themselves approved. So the planning board would not be looking at, you know, is it going to be Thai food? Is it going to be Chinese food? They're just approving pads and to make sure those all adhere to all of our requirements. There's also performance standards created. Electrical connections would be required for each pad. There has to be a 10-foot separation between the vendors, so the pads themselves 10 feet, they need to be paved or another approved surface. There has to be a temporary or permanent public restrooms. The EV parking standards would not apply. So then we'll get into the license requirements, and I'm happy to stop if you would like to contemplate this section, and then this moves on to the next agenda item. Or keep going.
What do you guys think? Do you want to have Autumn go through her whole presentation and then vote? Yeah, Autumn, if you could keep going, that would be great. Thank
So
you.
this is chapter 1015, and this is really the town clerk's world, but we worked with them to create this mobile food vendor license. And so this would apply to all food trucks. So we just talked about the food truck court, but now we're talking about the actual food truck. So no matter where they go in town, whichever approved court, or if they're just doing a private catering event, they would be required to get this license. It would take the place of their food handler's permit, so we would not have that redundancy. We would take that away. And the approval would be town clerk and town council, much like you just did for the previous item. So you have to meet all state of Maine Health Department regulations. There's a state of Maine eating place mobile license that you would have to hold, all of the standard health and safety. There's no fuel power generators permitted on mobile food vendor courts. You can use propane, but the idea was to prohibit diesel on a court. If you are doing an event, that's okay. But this is just a part of the license requirements. There's dimensional requirements. There's just basic things about what sort of water you have to have. Inspections are required. You need to show how you're going to deal with your waste. The license fee requirement, this is the third item, chapter 311, is proposed at $250. What we anticipate for next steps is the planning board will hear this public hearing on December 16th, and then we would bring it back to you all in January for final second reading and hopefully final vote. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Autumn. Questions for Autumn? Yeah, Karen.
What does Portland and other towns charge for the fee for?
That I do not know what they charge for the fee. This is in
Curious.
line with our other licensing fees, so that's why we chose it. But I can
I wonder if
find
we
that
can
out
make
for
it
you.
higher. I don't know. Okay, other questions? Yes, Counselor Cushing.
Autumn, somewhere in there, you said something about this wouldn't apply to food trucks, four-wheel, steering wheel, and so forth. I was confused about that portion of it.
No, it wouldn't, it would apply to them, but it would not allow them on, you can't just have a mobile food truck. We do not permit the food truck that goes from gas station to grocery store currently, and this would not allow that to happen.
So they could not drive up and park at one of these mobile courts?
They could go to an approved food court, they could, but that would be up to the landowner to work out how they have that lease agreement. So yes, some of them may come and go every day, some may park for a week at a time. That would be on an approved court though. So they couldn't just go everywhere.
I see, okay. And the second question, a food truck is depending a $50,000 to $150,000 investment if you want to get fancy. Building a restaurant, on the other hand, is a capital investment that jumps up into the millions. And so in your discussions, it would, I wonder about the proximity of these things to established restaurants from a competitive standpoint, where, you know, you could argue it both ways. Is one is, you know, you're increasing the traffic and restaurant row is better than isolated restaurant, et cetera. But I'm just curious to know how that, did you look at that consideration? Did you hear from established restaurant people?
We did look at that, and that was part of the discussion that we had. We did not get any feedback on our survey, just a little bit, but we didn't get anything really concerned about the distance. And we had that same discussion on long-range planning. Well, really, if you have an isolated restaurant, there may be more of a draw if you have this court. But so we ultimately looked at the court itself being basically a restaurant. And so that being located next to a restaurant would be appropriate. So.
Okay, well, and I guess as we move this along, I think we've all come to realize that people really start paying attention when stuff really starts to happen. I'd hate to have to come back and have a moratorium on this thing. So let's, I think really addressing that competitive issue proactively, I know Karen is in the room nodding her head, would be to whack some people on the head and say, we're doing this, speak now or forever hold your peace. We're trying to balance this so that we don't have these issues later. Thank you.
Yes, we did send out this survey that asked a lot of these questions about the restaurants, and we didn't get a lot of feedback, but the feedback that we did get was very detailed and gave us a lot of material for doing some of the updates. And the biggest issues that were talked about were, hey, we just want to make sure that they're playing by the same rules that we have to play by. And that's restrooms, parking, all of those types of things. So that was one aspect. We have that list of folks, and you're right, once something like this comes before us, more people get interested. So we can certainly reach back out with the new draft and send that back out to the various restaurants to make sure.
I would just observe that this issue first came up maybe 8 or 10 years ago. And at the time, there was a lot of concern by existing restaurateurs concerned with not only the capital investment they've made, but the overhead that they have and property taxes, so on and so forth. I think what we've seen is a sea change, that it's not uncommon now for restaurants to have food trucks themselves from the same establishment. And food trucks have often, morphed into a bricks and mortar. And so there appears to be a level of kind of acceptance in society. And that's in part why I think we didn't hear much complaint this time around when we surveyed them.
There is an opportunity for public comment on this topic. If you'd like to make public comment, go ahead and take the podium. Thank you, Autumn.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'll try not to be emotional. In 2018, the Downs created their proposal and presented it to the public at the racetrack building. But several of us stood up and said we thought it was crazy because of the traffic, because of the change of the nature of the town. And I have been pretty vocal throughout all those years saying Downs, Downs, Downs. Well, now, here we have, this is our zoning. And this half of this zoning is related to what is going to go on in this section of tonight. And I just am appalled because I think it has been brought up because the Downs wants a food court in their business, and the Downs wants a town center. And so I think that the zones are going to all be changed once again to accommodate the Downs. And, I just think it's wrong. 13 exemptions were made for the Downs on the GMO. I just think, where does it stop? And I don't know what can be done about it, but as far as I'm concerned, we have a town center. It's been here since 366 years it's developed. Now, I resent that the Downs is telling me that my town center is going to be in the Downs, and it's social managing. It's not my town center. We have a town center. And as far as a food court, where do we stop is all I can say. And it just seems to me that these are laws. And then all of a sudden, a developer comes along and says, I have a program and it has to, we have to get this done. Well, I mean, if somebody went through this, it's astounding that it's even on the table. So that's just what I'm very emotional about it, because the Downs has changed this community so much and in so many ways. With not only traffic, but I mean, just jammed buildings close together and and I'm very upset. I'm really, really upset. And I hope when we talked about moratoriums, well, maybe we can throw another moratorium in this. This is serious, really. So I don't know what else I can say, except please, please don't be so kind to the Downs.
Nina, will you state your name for the public record,
I
please?
think it's I used my time.
Nina McKee, Black Point Road.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
309 Black Point Road.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nina. Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Yeah.
Start with my name.
Yes, please. Name and address.
Name and
Thank you.
address. Liz Thornton, 5 Essential Way. I am an owner of a food truck that I would like to rent some space from an existing company or an existing business. And it doesn't have to be the Downs, ideally, maybe not, but we've been talking to some businesses around town and we would like to be one food truck, possibly. A lot of places don't have space for more than one, but space is at such a premium in Scarborough, as everybody knows, that we would like to be able to rent space from an existing business who has the parking. Maybe they're not open at the same hours that we are, so we could utilize the space a little bit better. Yeah, just other reasons to have food trucks, but we would like the option to have one food truck too. So just more options for people, please. Thank you. And yes, to food trucks.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to make public comment? Okay, I will go ahead and close public comment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
On the first.
We are on order number 24-109.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Thank you. Discussion. Yes, Counselor Fellows.
Thank you. Well, first of all, there were just references to the Downs, and I'll disclose, as most of you know, in my day job, I'm involved in affordable housing development, and my organization, the organization with which I work, is purchasing a parcel from the Downs for a 51-unit affordable housing project. I just wanted to put that out there in the interest of disclosure. But to me, sort of going back to the food truck question, to me, if it's a good idea, it's a good idea. And if it's worth considering, it's worth considering regardless of where the first request may have come from. And so I guess I would leave that aspect of it at that. Beyond that, I'm supportive of this. I think it's clearly illustrated in the record. This has already been through several steps of vetting by town staff, planning staff, as well as long-range planning. And I'm encouraged that they've really been responsive to the feedback that they've gotten from other business owners, and that these would operate under, comparable, appropriate licensing and site plan requirements. Thanks.
Thank you. Just also as a point of information, this did go through ordinance committee as well, which, looking up and down the dais, I realize I'm the only one left that was there for those discussions. Counselor Anderson.
Yep. So I got to sit in long range planning when this was very thoroughly debated. I think originally it was proposed bigger, and then the committee ultimately landed on, let's just focus on food truck courts to start. And so I think it's a good thing to consider. I will say, on Fridays in the Anderson house, we always talk about where to go out to eat for dinner, and it usually ends up with all of us in tears because we can't agree on a single place. So the notion of a place to go with options where we can all hopefully pick something that we all like and leave there happy instead of crying sounds really appealing to me personally. So You know, I think this is great. And again, I would say, I think competition is a good thing. And I think allowing a lot of these, which really are probably businesses trying to start up to what Tom mentioned, to become and build the capital needed to have a restaurant someday, I think is good. And it's good that we encourage these small startup businesses to be able to grow so that they could hopefully one day own you know, brick and mortar if that's part of their business plan. I do think it was an interesting suggestion, and I don't recall like if there was one pad on a location, does that count as a food truck court? No, that wouldn't count. Okay, because I do think that's something to consider. But you know, if we need to start with something, I think what we have now is a good starting place. So I'm going to support this moving forward tonight. And Nina, we're going to go to a food truck court somewhere someday together.
She was listening. Other councilor comments? Yes.
So personally, I'm a tablecloth, wait on me kind of guy. But I lived in Portland, Oregon for a while, and they love their food trucks out there. And one of the reasons for it is that it brings a lot of diversity to, you know, there's all kinds of food stuff that you would never think of. And you couldn't bring it to the community if you had to make the kind of capital investment that's involved in building a restaurant. So these are little startup companies that ultimately grow into big things. I believe the lobster guy, I can't think of.
Cousin's Maine Lobster.
Cousin's Maine Lobster, yes, started right around here with a truck. And now he is a national business. So I think this is a good thing. And I also think, I'm sorry, Nina, that it's time for us to move our mindset around the Downs. It's here. We should be supporting it, trying to make it as good as it can be. That's secondary to this discussion. I agree that with Corey that this is not a, you know, where it comes from shouldn't really matter. But I guess I don't have a problem going on the record here saying that the Downs is something that is here. It's demonstrated its economic viability and benefit to the town. And the best thing we should do now is get over ourselves, lean into it, and try to make it as good as it can be for this entire community.
Other councilor comments? Yes.
Yeah, the main reason, one of the main reasons I ran was to help the individuals in the audience that come up and speak, because so many times they get squashed. And I was for food trucks because I thought, yeah, let people do it if they want to do it. And I always wondered why the town didn't. Another question to lay away was I was wondering about the beaches and stuff, Ferry Beach and Herd Park. Would there be a food truck there?
No, sir. The way that the ordinance is designed, that zoning is not appropriate down there.
Oh.
So you could, this is a start that you would see basically Route 1, there's some zoning that's appropriate, Payne Road.
Right.
There is one part of TVC zoning on Black Point Road, but it's not near the beaches. So.
Okay, thank you. That's the place that it makes sense to me to have it, and they can't have it. And I have an individual here that wants, so now I've got two people, individuals, she wants to start a business, which I want to be for, but then Nina doesn't. And she was so passionate, I'm going to be opposed for her. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Cushing.
Yeah, if I can remember. Oh, yes, I wanted to, if I could ask Tom a question. We had some discussion a month or so back about Herd Park, and you showed me sort of a sketch of what was going there. As I recall, that there was some discussion of, stop me if I'm speaking out of turn here, but there was some discussion about leveling Emma's Eats and putting in a space for food trucks down there, which I agree would be a major improvement. It strikes me that this particular ordinance is a step in that direction. And I completely agree with you. I think what we have down there now is totally inadequate and icky. Okay, so I just wanted to support what you're saying, and it feels to me like this is a first step towards that type of thing.
Yes, Counselor, you're correct. The full build out of Herd Park in particular does envision removing the bathhouse and the concession stand. It's all one building for a number of reasons, not the least of which the majority sit within the back dune area and would need to be pulled back. In that event, rather than reconstructing and building a new concession stand, one of the options would be to create a bit of a food court, several pad locations where food trucks could be invited. But we're not there yet. We do have an existing concession stand that's operable, a concessionaire that likes being there. In fact, I just met with the Baileys yesterday, and they intend to come back next year. So in the near term, I think we're going to stay as we are. But if we do have to change that building, I think that would be part of the consideration.
Any final comments? Yes, Counselor Donovan.
It strikes me that the entrepreneurial element of this, for the little guy who might be able to start a restaurant business in a food truck, that just resonates with me. So long as you're going to properly zone it and manage it. And I think we heard from the planning director that that's the intention of the law. And that the history of these trucks now demonstrates that they are recognized. And so I think we're simply moving forward to keep current. But the business opportunity did strike me as valuable.
Just perhaps for the benefit of the new counselors, with respect to the Downs request, as I recall, their request and interest in a food court, though it may extend well into the future, is in the near term, as they move into the town center phase of their project, they wanted a way to increase activity, vibrancy, and they saw this as, at this point, an interim step. I think they have full intentions, as I understand it, to actually have bricks and mortar restaurants in this area that may ultimately replace the need for this food court, or they may choose to extend. But the impetus, as I understand it from the Downs perspective, is we would love to do some things, exciting things in the near term to generate interest and activity in this area until we can get to the big picture.
Thank you. At this point, are we ready to vote? Okay, I will go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? I show that as 6-1. Thank you. In this cluster of 3, we're now on to order number 24-110, first reading and scheduled public hearing on the proposed new chapter 1015A mobile food vendor ordinance. And this part in particular has to do with which piece, Autumn?
This particular ordinance is for the licensing. So
Okay.
this is what the food truck vendors themselves would come through town clerk, and then she would process that and it would come to you all for initial approval.
Perfect. Thank you very much. There is also opportunity for public comment on this, if anyone wishes to make public comment. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Council discussion. Seeing none, I will go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? I see that as 6-1. Thank you. Order number 24-111, first reading and scheduled public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendment to Chapter 311, Schedule of Fees to add applicable mobile vendor fees and modify fee for temporary event overflow parking.
So this one is dual. So this one has the proposed fee for the licensing at $250, but it also has a request from the Scarborough Beach State Park to look at our fees for the temporary overflow parking ordinance that we created. Last summer, they requested the use of their temporary parking. It was very successful. Along with public safety, no one heard any complaints. I think everything went as positively as expected. They would like to renew that for this year. At the time that we created that, we created an initial fee of $300 per day, and you can go up to 30 days of usage, but it's a not to exceed $5,000 amount. So they would request that we reduce the amount for the renewal. What is proposed is the $300 per day with a not to exceed $3,000 amount. So that's up for your consideration.
Thank you, Autumn. There is opportunity for public comment on this item if anyone would like to make public comment.
I'm Greg Wolfert. I reside at 409 Black Point Road. I run Scarborough Beach State Park. It's a state park, but it's privately run. It's self-funded. The state does not give us any money. We give them money. I have 17 lifeguards, 3 water rescue dogs, the only SAR jet ski in New England, and we use it numerous times, going to Higgins Beach, to Ferry Beach, to Pine Point, out to boats to check on great whites. So I'm bringing that up only because I feel the fee last year probably, well, I guess I got to take blame that I didn't read far enough into it that there was going to be a fee of $300 a day on non-town land, non-state land, and that it would shut off at $5,000. I brought it up to Autumn this spring. I got a note back that it would be 300 a day or not more than 3,000. And I did send a note to the town manager, an email, just reiterating that maybe 1,500 would be more respectful, because we have great relationships with the Scarborough PD and fire and safety. And I just think that, truthfully, I think it should be 500 because it's tied to the state park and no one else can do the same thing. I think it's what we offer, and it's not that it's going to stop if the fee stays that high. Our response time, it just means, you know, I have the most lifeguards of any state park in the state of Maine. I don't have to have any. We have a lot of rip currents, and me being there, I make sure that we have them because I know it's important, but I don't have to. Reed State Park doesn't have any lifeguards. They can't get them. We're fortunate enough that we can get them, and that's where our majority of our funds go, is funding and having the best crew that we can have. So I hope that you can reconsider this fee and think about what we can do and how we are, truthfully, the only public beach in Scarborough that has lifeguards. Thank you for the consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Wolford. And just for your information, Tom did forward your email to the council, so we all had that in advance of tonight's meeting. Is there anyone else wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, I will go ahead and close public comment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Don't wait for me.
Second.
Discussion. Counselor
Can I
Anderson.
just ask a question?
Absolutely.
To Autumn or Tom? The change of the fee for the overflow parking, is that still covering the costs of whatever it is that public safety and other teams are doing to support any event overflow? It is? Okay. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Scott.
Yeah, I am adamantly opposed to fees. I'm so sick of fees in this town. Fees are taxes. Fees are increase in taxes, and they keep taxing everybody. Every time we turn around, there's another new fee. It's already been established for them at the state park. Across the street, it was Jordan's Beach, and Gladys Jordan parked cars there. And then they started You know, when the overflow came, the Harmons started parking cars out behind their house, and they always did it. It was great. It got the flow of traffic off from Black Point Road, because they could go right into there instead of being backed up onto Black Point Road. And the public needs access to the shore and access to the beaches, and I am for public having access to the shore. And I am adamantly opposed. I can't believe he's agreeing to $500. He shouldn't. It should be nothing. What, this is something new? We're just implementing and all of a sudden gonna throw this on them? They're gonna have to pay $5,000? And was that, who's gonna pay that? The taxpayers in town are gonna pay that. Yes, they will. Because he's gonna have to go up on his fee to get in the park. He can't absorb that. He's gonna have to go up to go to the beach. So, you know, the people in this town gotta realize when these fees come on, it isn't income to you and to the town, really. It's the people that's gonna pay both ways on that. So, no, I think it's a bad idea. Bad, real bad.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty.
Thank you.
Counselor Cushing.
I have a question. The fee, what's the rationale for this fee? Is it offsetting some actual direct costs that we have? Can anybody explain that to me?
As general, fees need to resemble, you know, the staff time associated with administration of that activity or that fee. I think, as some of the existing counselors may recall, there was a fair amount of activity over a series of years with this matter. And frankly, for the initial year, I don't think we had an appreciation for what that fee should be. We don't really have a good precedent to look to. I think having the experience of this first year, having it go so well, and an appreciation that it was not overtaxing for town staff, we do recommend a reduction in the fee. And that's something we can continue to monitor. I would recall for your benefit, this was hotly contested by many of the folks in the President community. And I think this was a very reasonable compromise that was struck over a series of years, frankly. And I would argue respectfully, Counselor, that there should be some fee associated with it. I'll leave it up to you to decide what that fee should be.
Counselor Donovan.
Is this parking abutting Black Point Road?
Yes, it's on the opposite side of the beach in the formal parking lot.
On the opposite side of Black Point Road?
Yes, sir.
And as the name describes, it's temporary, so it's not readily apparent. It's not a paved area or even gravelled. I see the planning director going to correct me.
Yeah, if you want to give us some.
No, I just wanted to give you a
background
little bit
context.
of background.
Perfect,
So this is
thank
the overflow parking lot. We do not, it's zoned rural farming. We do not allow commercial parking lots in rural farming. So when I came on, Tom is right, there was quite a bit of contention and disagreement, and we came up with this compromise. This is a way that this particular applicant and others in the town, this is a town-wide ordinance that you could use, allows them to use that parking lot without having to pave it, without having to take care of stormwater, without having to spend all of the money they would if they installed an approved parking lot. It also, the temporary nature of it also protects us in our MS4 permit, and then it's under an acre of disturbance. And so this was a compromise. And so the fee was put in place. What we didn't contemplate was a renewal fee. And so that's where you have to come back and you have to renew it every year because they're going to want to ask for it. We as I said, we had a really successful year and didn't receive any complaints. So we're completely comfortable reducing the fee. I have not had anyone else use this permit throughout the year. I have had conversations with people that may use it, but I just want to give you a little bit of background on it.
Thank you, Autumn. Go ahead, Counselor Donovan.
No, it sounds okay. It sounds like it's meeting a public need. It's keeping cars off the roadway and allowing for access to and if there isn't too much, if we're meeting our costs with a reduced fee, I'd support being respectful of the people who are running this and agree with them.
Thank you. Other comments? Counselor Doherty.
More. Again, we're trying to fix something that's not broke. It's been working fine. I can't see that it's costing the town anything. It's not costing the taxpayers anything to have the parking that they've had there for 30 years. It's been established, it's grandfathered in that they were doing this. We've already done it. And you say a fee to administrate, you don't have to administrate. Just look the other way. You don't have to do anything. Everybody, that's what's the problem with bureaucracy, is everybody wants to fix it. You know, we spend an all night here discussing all the stuff to fix, and we don't have to. Everything's fine, you know? I mean, I just don't, I don't get it. I can see the problem with the light industrial zone, that there's confusion there as to what it can be in the residents and whatever, that should be a discussion that has to be decided. This isn't. It's a benefit to every taxpayer in this town to have that parking there without charging a fee. I just don't get why you have to micromanage it. It's not an issue. It's not a problem. They parked on the grass over there for 30 years. They parked on the grass, you know, and it's, you know, really only for, it used to be 3 days a year. It might be up to 9 days a year now, 9 or 10, but it's not that often that they have to do it. It's a very temporary thing. And I just don't know why we'd even bring this up. We shouldn't be bringing stuff like this even up to us.
Thank you. Just as a point of information, they did use the full 30 days. No, okay. 12? Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Other counselor comments? Yes.
I learned some new things about the beach. I haven't been there for a while, but I always wondered about the lifeguards, and I didn't realize that it's a private enterprise running it and providing that service. And if you have young kids and you would like to go to a beach where you feel like there's some protection, it's the only beach in Scarborough that offers any kind of lifeguard, if I'm not mistaken. And it seems like there's real benefit to that. And so when I hear the guy that runs the beach says 1,500 would be reasonable, that would make sense to me. Broadly, I think that there is a place for fees where, you know, again, it sort of puts the price tag on the people who use it the most and kind of leaves the rest of us off the hook. So I'm not completely opposed to fees. What strikes me about this is that there's a real benefit to the town that goes beyond parking. And if we were able to ease the burden on the folks who manage that, I don't think that would be a bad thing. So I'd motion that we cut it to 1,500. I don't think it will break our budgetary bank. And someone would like to second that, we can.
Okay, it looks like Counselor Donovan will second that motion. Discussion on the amendment.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I guess I'm generally inclined to agree with that, although I'd like to hear from the town manager or whoever would be appropriate, given that these fees seem to be predicated, the calculation of these fees is presumably predicated on covering actual costs, whether one agrees philosophically with whether those costs should exist or not. And so while I'm certainly sympathetic to the gentleman who runs the beach, I would want to make sure that we're not sort of solving the equation by arbitrarily cutting a fee to accommodate a single user, and that we don't short shrift the town.
Yeah, I think that the challenge for us is it's a brand new program. We have 1 year, one season under our belt. It was a very good experience, and you know, our expectation is that was indicative of the future. This is something that we can continue to monitor. And honestly, I don't expect that it'll be an overburden to town staff. I do think the program that was developed, fee aside, was a very creative way of allowing a use that's happened for decades, frankly, that has always been a sore point with many folks that live in that area. And so I think the program is a good one. It's a good solution to solve a problem fee aside. And the suggestion to go to 1,500, based on our experience this past season, I think is more than adequate to cover our costs.
Thanks, Tom. Other discussion? Counselor?
You say it's more than
Sure.
adequate. He did bring up a number of 500 would be perfect. And, you know, I think it should be so. I don't think it should even be an issue. I don't think we should even bring it up. I don't think it's a problem. If anything, it's alleviating the problem of traffic being backed up there waiting to get into the beach. I live there. You say the Prouts Neck people. Well, I am. I live there. And I have for 25 years now. Before that, I lived up here on Sunset Road and First Avenue when I was born. But so, yeah, I think 1,500 is too much too. But you've got a motion and a second. So unless you want to change your motion. Thank you.
Thanks,
No, I think for this year, I think we've gone from 5 to 15 and that's a pretty significant shift. I take your point, Scott. I understand what you're saying and, you know, we're trying to split the baby here. So.
Counselor Anderson?
Yeah, I'm fine going with the 1,500. I think definitely let's see what happens in the next year and assess. My concern is that, you know, it sounds like the current property where this is being applied today, we're not having issues, but if there are other places interested where we have costs that may need to get incurred, I just feel like 1,500 feels good to start. And again, maybe next year it becomes 0, but for now, I think it is a big leap from 5,000 to 1,500. And I just want to manage that risk of if other properties come forward, are we able to cover our costs?
Great, thanks, Sean. Anyone else? I will call a vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Show that is 6-1. Thank you. Back to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? I show that as 6-1. Thank you very much. Order number 24-113, act on the request of the town manager to adjust the business hours during the December holiday season to give town employees the day after Christmas off.
Yes, thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Hall.
Chair. Just the way the calendar falls this year, of course, Christmas Day is a recognized holiday for staff. Town hall and administrative offices are closed on Fridays as a matter of course. That would leave the day after December 26th as a business day. I don't expect there'll be much business conducted just with the way the calendar falls. And I respectfully request your consideration to close town hall on that Thursday. It would effectively be an additional day for staff. But I expect there'll be very minimal impact on residents. Should you approve this, we'll do our best to publicize this to make sure that we avoid any inconvenience so folks can do their business as necessary. But and just on behalf of staff, I think they would very, very much appreciate the acknowledgement and this gift.
There is an opportunity for public comment. I don't see anyone wishing to make public comment. I will close public comment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Discussion. Lost my place there for a second. Yes. Counselor
Thing.
Curry.
I assume this isn't one just this year. This is every year, right?
No, just this year, just
Oh.
the uniqueness of the calendar, it being Christmas on a Wednesday and town hall closed on Friday. So we would expect, again, it would be a great gift to staff and we expect we'll have minimal impact.
I'm all for it. I would be for it for every year. But, all right, thank you.
I'll be back with that request later. No.
Other discussion? Yes, Counselor Fellows.
Speaking for the new counselors, why couldn't we have started with this one first? That's light industrial.
We like to end on a happy note.
But in all seriousness, I agree, and particularly given that we've just been through a very busy election season, I think it's more than appropriate.
Thank you.
Counselor Anderson, you all set? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? I show that as unanimous. Thanks. Item number 10 is non-action items. We do not have any. Items 11 and 12 are standing and special committee reports and liaison reports and council member comments. I'll combine those two for tonight. And I will start with John Anderson. Thank you.
Yeah, no, tonight was an amazing night and I'm just so impressed by the discussion of and the thoughtfulness of the new counselors. Scott, I really appreciate your perspective that you're bringing because it's a perspective I think we need in terms of really challenging the status quo, especially as it relates to finances. And I felt like you did that and advocated and had me reconsidering things. So I really appreciate your new voice to the table. Corey, you bring so much expertise and thoughtfulness with planning, long range, and that came out clear in the light industrial conversation, even though I was worried for a second how you were going to vote, but that's just because I was wanting a certain vote. But again, I think I'm going to learn so much from you. And Bill, you know, your experience with legal situations, I think just brings a perspective and an expertise that doesn't exist. And the other three of you, I just think you're amazing. So I'm not going to spend time on there, but I just really glad about the council that is formed and want to welcome you all. And let's keep this good engagement going. Let's keep challenging each other. Let's keep debating. I think we all want the same thing, which is to make Scarborough an amazing, or continue to keep it as an amazing town. And I think we all might have different perspectives from time to time in terms of how or what that looks like, but I'm all ears to listen. I'm all ears to debate, and I'm all ears to figure out how we can compromise to make that vision successful together. So I'm really excited for the next year.
Thanks, John. Counselor Shoup.
So welcome to our new counselors. I feel like this is a somewhat early meeting, so I'll take that. I just wanted to mention a couple things. We lost Todd, but what is coming out of one of the last things we worked on with Todd with the Community Services Rec Advisory Board is to adjust the beach fees. So coming hopefully on the next agenda or the agenda after that will be the introduction of some different beach fees for the summer. And then also I just wanted to mention that when I was actually first elected, one of the first things I did was I went to the fire chief and I said, I want to be CPR certified. I haven't been CPR certified since, 8 years ago. Do you guys do that? No. So I was like, well, we should do that. Lots of pools, lots of oceans. And so 2 years later, I'm very excited to find out that they have now implemented CPR training classes every month. There are different levels that are available, like just hands-free for people like me, or if you want to be trained very thoroughly. And so the first one was tonight. The next one is at the next council meeting. So I was very disappointed. I'm very excited about this program. The chief did offer to come and do a program with all of us if we were interested to give us a brief CPR hands-free training. I was like, if that's the only way I'm going to get it, maybe we could all do it. But I told them that I would just throw that out there tonight. But I also just kind of wanted to emphasize that it takes a little while, but eventually you do get things done and good things can happen. So it's exciting.
Thanks, Karen. Other council member comments or committee updates kind of carry over from before? Yes, Councilor Cushing.
Yes, I had the pleasure of meeting with Norm and Nick this week in Nick's new role as guy in charge of stuff. What projects? Is that what your special project? You should have called me. Anyway, so we discussed some stuff. In particular, the notion of trying to simplify the presentation of the budget numbers to make them more easily accessible to the less informed in the world, I suppose. And anyway, so it was a very good discussion and I was pleased to have it. And I was very pleased to see that we are moving in that direction because my hope is that we will come forward with a document that really helps us dig into the meat of the matter and to make better informed decisions about what we spend money on and what we don't spend money on. Don't spend money on. Just want you to hear that. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to thank all the members for accepting me in, calling me, congratulating me, and it was really nice the way you had the dinner tonight and everything. Appreciate that. It was really great. And I have one other thing that I guess this is a time to bring it up, is the agenda. If we could have two agendas, one like this with, XC2, TV, C3, all of that, and a layman's term agenda that just says what it is. Because I can't even tell what that was about looking at the agenda. And I think the people coming in, I assume they get the same agenda if you have it, and the people coming in, I think that when she got up to the podium, after you read that off, then she got up and said, well, what that means is this. And she told us exactly, very simply, what it meant. So I'd like to see something like that come about, that we could change that somehow in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Counselor Doherty. Other comments? Yes, Counselor Donovan.
Counselor Doherty's point. We're, at least three of us are somewhat unfamiliar with a lot of the background. And I appreciate the effort that's being made by staff to include the opportunity to be educated, the spreadsheets that give a little bit of a summary. And I would encourage that to be continued, because we're on a steep learning curve. And we want to be participants, but we want to be participants in an intelligent fashion. And so I appreciate the effort to educate us. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Go ahead, Counselor Fellows.
Thank you. Yes, I'd also like to thank my fellow council members and town staff, all of whom reached out in the last couple of weeks. They've been very, very welcoming, and we saw right out of the gate that we're not always going to agree, but I think it has the makings of a good, productive group. And someone told me leading up to this that sometimes the things that are maybe perceived by the public as being maybe a little uncomfortable or almost dysfunctional, or that's actually healthy. I think it's good that council members can actually deliberate in real time with the public watching to see that it's real, and that we don't, it's not pre-baked, so to speak. So I think that's all very healthy. The other comment I'll make just generally, which is based partly on some of the comments tonight, particularly from a couple of members of the public, is that the town definitely is changing. The town has changed a lot. Whether one agrees with the overall direction is, it's opinions vary. The Downs is here, as Councillor Cushing pointed out. The Downs is here, and there are a lot of other things that are here that weren't here a few years ago. And so I guess my hope as a member of this council is that we can all try to be as forward-looking as possible and solution-oriented as possible. And that's what I've seen recently from the council, and I hope that this iteration can really carry that forward and hopefully get past, and hopefully help members of the public get past some past frustrations or grievances that they might have, and really be more forward-looking. So I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thanks. You go ahead, Councillor Cushing.
Well, Madam Chairman, all I wanted to say was nice job.
Thank you. Oh, don't do that. I haven't done my bit yet. So I actually have a little bit of old business. As communications chair, we have one more kind of uncommitted article for 12-1 for the Leader and for the e-news. We had decided as a communications committee to do a new counselor spotlight. And so I will reach out to all three new counselors and kind of just give you maybe some base questions, and you can provide feedback, and Allison can do a little profile on our new counselors for our 12-1 e-news article. And then lastly, I'll just say thank you. Thank you for electing me to be chair. I promise that I will work really hard, and I know that you will all push me to be the best version of myself, and I will promise to do the same for you. So I'm really looking forward to this year. And with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Don't wait for me. All those in favor? Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.